Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As you may know, I'm Nishant. We've got Ojas Vipat, who's the CEO of Mayhem Studios. So, Mayhem is the studio behind the upcoming title Underworld Gang Wars. This is a battle royale game set in India, backed by MPL, a leading real money gaming platform in India. Now, before we dive into the conversation, I want to quickly mention our newsletter, Pixel PNL. It's a great way for you to stay up to date with the latest in the gaming industry, market insights, key trends driving business and development in India. My colleague Udbhav will be sharing the link to subscribe in the chat. So feel free to sign up either via email, WhatsApp, or LinkedIn anytime during the webinar. We'd, of course, love for you to join our community. With that salesmanship out of the way, let's begin today's discussion. Ojas, it's fantastic to have you here with us today. I know that you bring a lot of wealth, a wealth of experience from Tencent, MPL, and now as CEO of Mayhem Studios. You're working on one of the most ambitious battle royale games in India. And, before we dive into the specifics of UGW, maybe you could share a little bit about how your journey has been so far and what excites you the most about the Indian gaming space right now.
Yeah, thanks, Nishant, and wonderful to be here as well. Before I kind of introduce and give more context, Mayhem proudly has many more backers other than MPL as well. We have Peak 15, StudView, Truecaller and Lumikai, and many more as our backers. So I just want to lay out that we are an independent company working on this game with pretty much prolific investors behind us. And talking about a bit about myself, so before here, as you pointed out, I was with Tencent. I saw firsthand the journey and the power of PUBG Mobile and how it became a cult phenomena in India. Very thankful for that journey. What we noticed during that time is that with the UPI payments going up, with internet penetration going up, with people having more disposable income, as well as, just a craze for really good experience on games, on devices that are available, not just consoles and PCs, which have a very limited market share compared to mobile phones in India. There was a game that the public wanted and that they got. So that's before here. And of course, I've worked on many games before that as well, but primarily in the US market and some other markets. At Mayhem, our sole focus is to make this game, Underworld Gang Wars. It's a battle royale rooted in India, built for gangsters. We have been very fortunate to get a lot of love from our community. We have over 8 million pre-registrations. We have a lot of eyeballs on us. There are a lot of expectations on us, which we are well aware of. And we get a lot of hate also from time to time on things that people don't like, which I think is another form of love itself. If you're a gamer, you know what I mean. So that's me. Over to you for what's next.
Amazing. Yeah, I think the hate is inevitable whenever you're building something ambitious, not just in India, right? I think that's just a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
Let's start with a broad industry question. Why do you think so many companies in India are focusing on battle royale games? And, with a game like BGMI that's already kind of dominating the market, do you feel like there is room for more titles? And, as an extension to that question, what does Mayhem see as its unique opportunity here with UGW?
Sure. I think BGMI and Free Fire Max and COD Mobile and a bunch of other games have kind of created a solid baseline for people to know that India deserves a market in the first place. I would say that before that, India was just considered a DAO farm. People would come and basically just try to acquire users in the country, but not really build a serious business or pay attention to the community or run esports or do anything like that, which, warrants a big market strategy. So these games have laid a great foundation and they are still going strong, which is great. Having said that, if you talk to people, if you look at the player base, if you interact with them, while there are a lot of people who are still playing those games, some of them are saying, well, what's next? What's after this game? What's after PUBG Mobile or BGMI now? what's after Free Fire? And that answer is not very straightforward. That answer is not just, an extraction shooter. That answer is not just, an ability shooter. That answer also has a layer of, well, as an Indian audience, what's next for us? Not just another game coming in from outside, which we love and play anyway. But if our content in general can be so localized, why can't a game be? So I think that's where the opportunity really lies, is making a game that truly represents India in a very different format, provides people the opportunity to play in a world that they relate with, and also focus and community building from ground up for a country that's largest country, and in gaming terms also it will be one of the largest markets in the world soon. It deserves its own game. But that itself is not enough, right? I would say, coming back to your question about what gives us permission to do this. So right now we are focused on providing that experience in a setting, in a world with characters that people like and love. But we would also be experimenting with themes, with gameplay modes, with characters, with mechanics that will then truly take us apart and truly add a desi tadka into a game for the community. So that's like a long-term plan for us over time.
Interesting. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying it's a mix of unique gameplay experiences along with a significant dash of localization and catering to the Indian audience that's going to be your right to win, if I may say so.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Right. I want to move to a slightly different question around game development, right? We've recently seen Black Myth Wukong's success coming out of China. When it comes to AAA game development in India, do you think this has prompted some discussion about whether or not a AAA game could be developed here? And, on that note, what specific barriers do you think exist? What do you think needs to change to make this possible? And is it something you believe could realistically happen in the near future?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nishant. I mean, it has been a point of quite a lot of attention in our company as well when we discuss. So a few things that we need to consider. Even Black Myth Wukong took 7 years to make, right? Even in a country that already has been making games for decades with great quality, for them to really live up to that AAA standard, they took 7 years to make a game like that. And kudos to that team. I think in a way, any company, any young startup, I would say, that starts on an ambition like this, there's a lot of resilience needed to be able to do that. I would say in India, it's high time, and it's very much possible that we can make something like that as well. It will require time, it will require money, it will require patience and resilience, and it will require the community to be very, very forgiving for a while for people to make their mistakes. And I think that's the path we are on as well. It's only a matter of time that India will see at least one game, if not more, that can live up to, let's not talk about in terms of like AAA or those things, but that can live up to that global Indian standard, if I may say so, where it's equally good as some of the other games, but it's truly catering to the local audience that's here, that's waiting for something like this to happen.
Apart from UGW, obviously, which I'm sure you will call out, any other games that you've seen that have really impressed you, that are pushing the boundaries here in India?
I would say Scarfall 2.0. Their gameplay is really good, and they're working. They're a small team as well. They've been at it for a while. Not just Scarfall 2.0, but Scarfall as well. So there's a lot of respect for them. And in general, I think anyone who's on this journey, be it us, Super Gaming, Scarfall, there are a bunch of others as well. It's a tough climb. It's like if we were to draw a sports parallel, us looking for an Olympic gold medal, right? You can't get to gold till you have at least 100 attempts at getting a bronze first in a category that's possibly so competed across the globe that the amount of money poured in there itself is more than everything put together in our country in terms of sport spend, right? So it will take time, but we will get there. And that's the journey that we are on. And there's a lot of respect that we have for our fellow competitors who are on that journey with us together, because we believe that there's not just one person who will win the market. Even globally, that's not happened. Even in India, that's not going to be the case.
Well said. Now I've got to ask a slightly sticky question here, right? So when you're developing a game like Underworld Gang Wars, which is centered around crime, are there any creative limitations that you need to navigate here? Just as an example, right? Grand Theft Auto pushes boundaries with controversial content and satirical elements. You have, sex workers on the street. You have themes around drugs, violence, etc. in those games. They've just gone, all out, clearly. Do you think Indian developers can explore similar themes within the Indian context? Or do you feel like there are cultural and even legal restrictions that influence how far you can go here?
Yeah. I mean, we are in a very unique place, I would say, compared to some of the other countries. I do think there are restrictions, for sure. I would rather call them responsibility of a developer rather than restriction, because in a way, we are trying to cater to an audience, but we are not trying to, go up, avoid laws or, bend the laws in certain ways. We will stick to the age restrictions. We will stick to the themes and policies laid out by Google Play Store, Apple Play Store, by regulations across the country. And within that, there is a lot of creative liberty. Like if you look at our TV series or our movies, right, those are also exploring quite mature themes. And there is a lot of creative liberty used there as well. The gaming ecosystem is a little bit nascent compared to that, especially locally made games. So it will also evolve, and we will be at the forefront of that evolution of trying to figure out what's the boundary of it and what's the acceptable way to present content to players. But still, it allows for a very wide range. Of course, not at the GTA level. I would say that's probably taking it too far. And maybe not needed for us as well, because multiplayer games, you don't really need something like a RPG or a single player game, right? So it's in a different way that we use creative liberties, and we'll continue to do that. And for now, I think in the next few years, we'll see more constructive responsibilities and guidelines added on this front to allow for a very clear framework to emerge.
Any specific anecdotes that you may be able to share from within the team? With all the developers that I've interacted, there is this left brain, right brain battle that keeps happening in the company, right? Someone proposes something absolutely wild, and then someone from the right brain side has to come back and say, no, we will all go to jail if you do this. Any such examples that you'd like to share? Anything that comes to mind?
Well, if I share the example, I'll already be in jail. So let me not share any specific example, but see, it's like, if we were writing Sacred Games or Mirzapur or Gangs of Wasseypur, right? Like, it is the story, the characters deserve a certain treatment, right? So those are the exact discussions we have internally as well, and that takes us to really strange places, to be honest, and we have to pull ourselves back from there. So it's a very natural process, I would say. In a way, the responsibility of making sure that everyone, if we make something that is, let's say, outside the boundary, or that is, near the boundary, we will be restricting our audience. So that's where the right brain comes in, not just from a legal or a policy or, perception perspective, but also from, we want as many people as possible to try this out. So why would we introduce something that really maybe is even a gimmick, not really needed in the core loop, but provides us that wow viral gimmick that we can then ride on the back of.
All right, let's move on to a different topic, right? So one of the common observations in India specifically is that many locally made games seem to stay in either pre-registration or beta phases for a fairly prolonged period. Why does it seem to take longer for games made over here to move past these stages? Is it a resource issue, market pressure, or is there something else behind the scenes that non-developers like us are not privy to?
So I think it's the perception, first of all, right? Like League of Legends Wild Rift was in pre-registrations for 3 years, if I remember correctly, at least 2.5. There are other games, including shooter games, which have been in pre-registration for longer than any of the Indian games that are in pre-registration right now. So firstly is perception. People tend to assume that if something is in pre-registration, it will just go out live, right? Second, I would say is this is a form of test from a right brain perspective, as you mentioned. It's a test. Do people really want this or not? If they do, it's like a 30-second elevator pitch of the game. If they do like it, then you have something at your hand that deserves a further in-depth merit, right? So if you look at, let's say, go back to early days of even League of Legends when it was being made, they made a demo basis which they raised money, right? So I would say a lot of Indian developers, because the ecosystem is not as evolved here, the money is not as freely available here, also use it as a marketing /pull/podium/fit test as well. Third thing is coming down to development side of things. These things take time. At times, people like all the Indian developers, most of them, this is their first game in this genre, in this quality, with this competition. And they don't want to do a shoddy job at it, right? So it takes time, it takes multiple iteration, it takes a lot of cooking. It's like if you were to look at dals, this is the dal bukhara of games compared to something that's a tadka dal that you can make in quick time. And it's good if people take that time, if they have the wherewithal to work through it, because it will provide a better experience for the players on the other side.
Interesting. You've got a diverse experience under your belt, right? You worked at Tencent before joining Mayhem. How does the experience of working for a Chinese tech giant compare with leading an Indian startup? Just to double click on that, how do things like work processes, resources, and creative freedom differ between the two?
It's poles apart. It's absolutely different, right? So we are building the airplane while we are flying, and they have built the airplanes multiple times, and this is like probably one of the flights that is taking off, right? So it's a world of a difference. There's a lot to learn from big conglomerates like Tencent. They are the leading game developer in the world in mobile games, especially in shooter games, without a shadow of doubt. All the biggie games are probably made by them, or published by them, or they have some hand in it. The amount of talent depth that not just the company but the country has compared to ours, because of decades more of experience, it's just absolutely insane. To draw a parallel, like when we did our first rocket launch for ISRO, what kind of tools, processes, people, talent, depth, skill set was available was very different from now. We are at the forefront of satellites and space travel now. But right now, gaming industry is at its infancy in this genre. People are really trying to make a big dent, but there's a lot to learn from these big companies, which I also learned quite a lot. Running a startup like this in India, it is, I would say, like we were discussing on the perception bit earlier, right? Like it's a lot of trying to understand how to balance out giving a good experience to the players and also giving enough time for things to cook. Because you're not just cooking, you're basically training somebody to cook, and you're collecting the ingredients which may or may not be available at as easily as somewhere else. So yeah, so it's quite different.
I love the cooking analogy. Is that something that you do in your pastime? Do you enjoy cooking, or is it just something that came to mind right now?
Funnily, I don't know how to cook well, so it's just like I'm a foodie, so that's why
Okay, cool. Uh, in addition to experience at Tencent, you spent some time at MPL. Did you notice any differences in how RMG players behave versus traditional gamers? And specifically, is the strategy for monetizing players in RMG titles significantly different from that of conventional online games? Maybe you could talk us through what you've learned about the nuances of player behavior in these two distinct categories.
Sure. It's a very different persona, first of all. Like a typical RMG player, winning and how much winnings is more important than anything else for that matter. So it's like, again, taking a real game example or a different game example. It's like if you're playing poker for money with your friends versus you're playing maybe FIFA with them, right? Like what you care about in poker is your strategy, is how much your pot size is how much you're betting, how the other people are behaving. You're observing all those factors, and then you care a lot more deeply about how your pot is growing or shrinking, hopefully growing. But yeah, you know how these things go. And when you're playing FIFA with your friends, you're more focused on having fun, and that additional player card that you want to buy is more for vanity. It's more for showing off that you have a better team, that you have a better player, that you have something more advanced. In case of shooter games, it's that skin, it's that mythical gun, it's something else. So the player persona and the way they act is entirely different. And I think very few overlaps, in my opinion, on those two. Having said that, one thing that is common, or a few things that are common, are people are super competitive in both, like extremely competitive. Second is that people care a lot about the details, the recoil pattern of your AK. A good player would remember. Similarly, a good RMG player would remember the past few, let's say if it's poker, the hands and where they went up haywire, right? So those kind of things are common as well.
Interesting. And how are you thinking of the monetization approach for UGW? What role does something like player psychology play in shaping those strategies?
So we will surely focus on in-app purchases and typical methods of monetizing, which are very common, season pass and all those things. Player psychology, like I was telling earlier as well, plays a massive role here. The parallel is that you're not really buying something you need. If you look at the hierarchy, right, like Maslow's, you're not really buying something that you absolutely need. You're buying something that you want. That's a very different way of looking at what to sell. It's not a functional good. It's not like a scooter or a car or something that you use. It's something that is like a sports shoe, an Air Jordan, that the feel of it, the brand value of it, the social acceptance of it, the showing off aspects also play a big part.
Yeah, and I think, one of the threats that everybody in this industry faces due to that is, since it's discretionary vanity spending, you're also partially at the mercy of, macroeconomic cycles.
Yeah.
If purchasing power goes down, no matter how good your product is, they're just not going to prioritize spending on it. So keeping that view in mind, yeah, sorry, go on.
I mean, it's funny. COVID was the boom period for gaming, right? So even though the macroeconomic situation was not that great, people were still spending. Similarly, like there's gaming included, some of these industries for gamers, they're not discretionary. Like that's the, I think, realization that at least we've had over the years. When we compare something like that is absolutely essential good versus gaming, If you look from outside in, and all the folks on this podcast will not look from that perspective, but people who look at business and who are investors or who are maybe not as much of gamers themselves, they'll look at it as a discretionary spend. Whereas gamers would not, absolutely not. if Wukong has come out, if you do a poll here in your chat, I'm sure a lot of people would either have already bought it or are looking to buy it or are watching videos of it. So that's not really a discretionary spend per se.
True. And I mean, at the end of the day, it is our go-to source of entertainment. And, you know, when you're down in the dumps, you really want more of that entertainment.
Exactly. It's not really a fictional virtual world. It's your reality. It's like what you really enjoy doing. Now, you can argue that playing cricket in a way is also that, right? Where you're just taking a bat and ball. For somebody who doesn't know cricket, like what is this a round leather thing and a wooden stick and you're hitting things, like that's weird. But it's a life and it's a passion and it's truly one of the religions, I would say, in the country. So that way, gaming actually, I would argue that it will not suffer as much as some of the other industries in a down run.
I'm very happy about the ticket analogy. You know, just as a side note, I have used that same point at least 100 times. With family, with business stakeholders, with multiple folks. You know, you take a bat, you're hitting a ball with it. Why is that more entertaining than me shooting someone on the street?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the legendary couple, they've had to make this argument with maybe hockey someday. So we're just time challenged in a way.
Right. Okay. Next question. Right? UGW is rooted in India. Does the game have global ambitions, or is the focus, you know, primarily on just dominating the Indian market? If it is the former, how do you see UGW standing out in the global battle royals landscape?
So right now our focus is purely here. We just want to make sure that we serve the audience very well here, and global comes after that. In a way, when the game reaches that standpoint where we can confidently say that, you know, players in India love it, it will by default achieve global standards. Like giving you again a parallel example here, UPI probably is the most sophisticated payment system in the world. Why? Because it's tested on the largest set of population and people ever possible. And if you make one mistake in that, you can be assured that you'll get 100 calls for that 500 rupees refund that the players will demand, right? So I think from a quality perspective, India is pretty good as a country to really build some really solid products. What we will have to figure out over time is our GTM, is our positioning, is our branding, is our esports, and those things. The product itself, once we are successful in India, we are fairly confident that it'll find buyers or players rather than other countries.
So on that note, let's segue to a discussion about esports, right? It's clearly become a huge driver for the success of games like BGMI and Free Fire. And, you mentioned Indus. Just today, in fact, I saw an announcement that they're doing about a 2.5 crore esports tournament as soon as the game releases, right? From UGW's perspective, is esports a priority from day one, or is that a later stage consideration?
Esports is at the core of what we are doing. So we are designing the product so that it's competitive. We are designing our guns, we are designing our experience, combat, camera control, all of that, so that people can really find the mastery and the skill in the esports. That's an input for if as a player you can improve by putting in more hours, then it deserves to be an esports game, right? So that's the first step that we are taking. When we go towards launch, and as we go towards launch, we will of course ourselves also be doing our own set of esports and creating a community, creating buzz brand around it. But that's a little bit distant for us because we are focused on the first pillar first, trying to get that really magical experience that an esports players would want to see.
Okay. I must ask a question that asks you to crystal gaze a little bit as well, because a lot of our subscribers and readers are tournament organizers as well. How are you thinking of the esports ecosystem down the line? Are you thinking of it as, a closed circuit, closed system, more like Riot Games? Or are you thinking of a third-party organizer, inclusive system like Valve?
So we are evaluating all options. I don't think we are on one side or the other right now. Our way of looking at it is what's the best way to provide most people access to this tournament, right? So that's how we will go. But having said that, I don't have a definitive answer as of right now.
Sure. Okay. Jumping back into the depths of the game, right? You've had a number of closed beta tests and a few play tests as well. Can you share some key insights and observations from those tests? And, what do players in general love? What areas are you focusing on for improvement before launch? And any stories of how, feedback from a playtest has taken development in a different direction?
Yeah. I mean, feedback from the playtest is pretty much at the core of development for us. So we take it very seriously. I would argue at times too seriously as well, because we also need to provide some amount of, letting the feedback seep in and trying to really understand what the players want. So in a way, all the playtests that we have done have given us one or more big insights for us to then work on. Like to give you an example, in the last closed beta playtest, we got feedback on we need graphics to be better, and we need movement and animations to be better. That became our number one and number two priority for us to work on. Then some of the people were talking about how performance is something that they would like to see on low-end devices or mid-end devices improve. So that became another set of priority for us. On the good side, people really like the characters. People really like the hotspots. People really like the realistic nature of the game. Our game is not set in the fantasy or the cartoony anime kind of space. They really like and appreciate that. They also really like the combat in certain aspects, like slums, apartments, or fort. Also, fort itself as a hotspot, we've got tremendous amount of feedback on, saying that it's one of a kind, like such a big, massive structure in a game, and which represents truly something very uniquely Indian. People didn't imagine would be possible in a VR game, which is a very large map. And most recently, I think we released like we haven't got a lot of people try it out, but we have at least put out some content on TDM and our new Ajanta Ellora inspired Mayavi Caves map, which we are receiving tremendous praise for as well. So yeah, it's like whatever. It's like one of our values as a company is also player first. It's truly critical to how we operate.
Right. So I'm going to throw in another newsletter plug and then come to you with a few personal and, fun questions, right?
Sure.
Quick reminder to everyone in the chat. We have a pretty kick-ass newsletter. It's called Pixel PNL. It's free. It's available on email, WhatsApp, and on LinkedIn. My colleague is sharing links in the chat. Please feel free to subscribe whenever you can. Give us a shot. You will not regret. Ojas, I want to now jump into a few fun questions. First of all, when is your game releasing?
That is a great question. Your question hurt me. If you know the reference to what I'm saying.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
Let me come to, a little bit about you. What's your favorite food?
Sorry?
What's your favorite food?
Food. I'm from MP, so I would have to count poha as my favorite for sure.
Your favorite video game, and don't say OGW.
Yeah. That keeps changing, by the way. I would have to count Valo as the favorite right now.
Okay. So I'm assuming you're a dedicated PC gamer more than anything.
Yeah. Yes.
And multiplayer seems to be where your heart lies.
Yes.
Are you a rager or are you a calm gamer?
I'm a schizophrenic gamer, so you can count me anywhere.
Amazing. Have you had the LAN cafe experience in India while you were growing up?
Not really. am from a small town, so when I was young, there weren't really LAN cafes. I didn't even know what they are in the first place. But yes, early when I got my first PC and then over time in college, etc., LAN experience I have had later on.
Awesome. Right. The last thing I want to ask you here is, what is your knowledge diet like? How do you stay sharp? How do you stay up to speed with the industry?
I watch, read a lot, and I look at comments from people as well in the videos. I talk to people, I talk to our player base, I talk to other people as well. The best thing I would say is there are some really good people like yourself who are sharing a lot of information in Indian gaming outside as well. If somebody is a big fan of, let's say, a specific genre of games, they can subscribe to a streamer, they can subscribe to an influencer. At times, there are people who just put out news there as well. Those are, I think, the best ways for keeping up to date. And lastly, like playing yourself also helps quite a lot. I think there is nothing substitute for a feel of a game. Talking about it doesn't really make any sense after a certain point. So that would be my advice.
So I think the follow-on question to that is, for Ojas, the CEO of a company, as opposed to Ojas, the builder of UGW. You mentioned you read a lot, you watch a lot. Any particular resources that you'd like to share that, really inspire you or have helped you in your journey so far?
So, typical startup books, 0 to 1, those kind of set of books, all of them, Atomic Habits, and those I would recommend. Deconstructor of Fun is a very good specific gaming focused newsletter that I find very insightful. On the gaming side, I forget the name of the book, but I recently read one book about basically the creators of Doom, the two Johns. I'll try to remember the name. That was a great book as well. Just like the madness and the craziness and also the genius of how those people pretty much built the shooter genre, I would say, argue. So things like that, those are just top of mind. But I read and watch quite diverse set of things. It's important to not just stay in gaming. I would argue that we need to look at other things as well outside to draw parallels and bring things into gaming. That's how Battle Royale as a concept also kind of came from a movie, right? So those things are very important as well.
And on that note, what do you do outside of work? How do you spend your time?
Oh, well, I've already talked so much about reading and watching, and I listen to music as well. That's probably an addition. And games, like that's pretty much it.
Super. Great. As we wrap up, Ojas, I'd really like to thank you for sharing your valuable insights. It's clear that studios like Mayhem are trying to push the boundaries to deliver some exciting and culturally relevant games like UGW. Just want to say thank you once again, and thank you to everyone that attended. It's been an absolute pleasure having you, Ojas, and let's keep in touch.
Likewise, thanks for the opportunity, and hope if there are any questions and things I could answer them. If there are more, I'm happy to take on follow on as well.
Super. I don't think we have any questions coming in just yet, but I think maybe you could just let us know where your socials are, and anyone listening to the podcast later can reach out to you.
Yeah, sure. You can just simply email me. I'm at ojas@mayhem-studios.com. That's my email ID.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Ojas. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.